Alright, what's up, guys? Bringing you in another deck profile today. One of the most annoying decks on the planet to face online. And I'm bringing you Time Lords. This deck is unbelievably frustrating to play against. Let's get started. Let me show you what we've got here. We've got 3 copies of Time Maiden. This card searches like the entire archetype, almost. It's incredibly good. Basically, if you have no monsters, you can special summon this card for free. It counts as 2 tributes for a Time Lord card. So, and then also you contribute it, and then add a Time Lord with 0 attack from your deck to your hand. That's already good. And then you can banish this card and special summon a Time Lord from your deck with 0 attack, ignoring its summoning conditions, and you can't special summon other monsters if you activate this effect, which is just nuts. I mean, like, it's a +1. It's a really good card. It has so many like cool effects. Adds a card back to your hand. It summons a monster from your deck. Unbelievably good. Unbelievably good. Exactly what the archetype. This card actually made this archetype an archetype, because before it was just a bunch of loose normal summons, but this card like changed everything. Then we played 2 copies of Sandion the Time Lord. So Time Lords do have a restriction, and their major restriction is that they cannot be special summoned from the deck, but we get around that with Time Maiden. But their other major restriction is that let me move this back so the glare disappears. Their other major restrictions is that they are shuffled back into the deck during the standby phase, and this is all of them. And then also their benefits are that they can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and also you can normal summon them. You can if your opponent controls a monster, or if you control no monsters, depending on the card. Like for this particular one, your opponent has to control a monster, but for the others, you just, as long as you control no monsters, you can special summon. You can normal summon the card without tributing, and it's a level 10 monster. You just throw out right on the field. This is one of the only ones that actually has attack. This has 4,000 attack, but all of them you take no battle damage, and your opponent takes no battle damage. That is a restriction with all of them. But that is mostly the same with every single one of them, except when they battle, they get an individual effect. With this particular card, you get to, after it battles, inflict 2,000 life points to your opponent, which is really good. Then we play 2 copies of Zaphion. This card you only need to control. You just don't have. You just can't control any monsters, and then you normal summon this. So basically, with this card, oh yeah, I'm sorry. With this card, when it battles, and this card's so good it's even splashable in other decks. It's very good against True Draco actually, and other back row decks. Basically, this card, when it battles, you can shuffle your opponent's back row back into their deck, and then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can draw a card. Which I don't even know why it's on there, but I mean, I guess it's nice. It's just like a free effect. I guess if they like non-targeting send it to the graveyard or something, you get a free card. I get no, well, targeting send to the graveyard, then you get a free card, and then again during the standby phase, shuffle it back. 2 copies of Mishion. Remember, no battle damage is taken. With this card, when it battles, it halves your opponent's life points, and then, like I said, same thing, shuffles back into the deck. 2 copies of Lazion. He's one of the better ones too. No battle damage at the end of the battle. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battles, shuffle all cards from your opponent's graveyard back into their deck. And what's it called? Once per turn, if your opponent draws, they take 1,000 damage, which is, again, it's just a nice little burn one. This one's good because that even counts the draw phase. So this one is good because you can, like, whenever you want to finish off your opponent, you just summon this, end your turn. Let's say they have like 500 life points, they draw for turn, they lose. So this one's good for finishing off your opponent. But also, yeah, it takes all of the cards from their graveyard and puts it back into their deck. We've got 1 copy of Camion the Time Lord. This one, you shuffle 1 card back after this card battles and inflict 500 damage. And neither player can activate any cards or effects in response to that card's activation. So basically, it's like a speed spell 4 card. Can't respond. It's non-targeting removal off the field, shuffles back into deck. Very, very good. Meteon the Time Lord. When this card, at the end of the battle phase, if this card battles, you can return as many monsters on the field as possible, including, of course, your own, but most of the time you'll only have one of these. Um, and if you do inflict 300 to your opponent for each card returned, which is pretty good. This is Gabrion the Time Lord. If this card battles at the end of the battle phase, shuffle as many cards your opponent controls into the deck as possible, and they draw the same amount back. This one is okay. Again, I don't mind playing them at one because they're all searchable and you can choose whatever one you want whenever you want. But this one's not bad if they have like a seriously good board. It's certainly not bad. This is a very good anti-meta deck. Halion the Time Lord. This is one of the somewhat newer ones. Again, same thing. No battle damage. All the same restrictions I read earlier. If this card battles and your life points are lower than your opponent's, then you can inflict the difference. So it can help you catch up if you need to. And then we got one Raffion. You can, if this card battles, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of one monster your opponent controls that battled with this card. So you could just attack into something that has really high attack. Good against Thunder Dragons, because all their monsters are gigantic. But basically with these Time Lords, you can usually, first of all, if you're playing against the right deck, the Time Lords is just an auto win, because if they don't have like an Effect Veiler or Impermanence or some sort of way to negate your effects, or or some kind of targeting removal that doesn't destroy, then you can pretty easily win. It's a pretty difficult deck to face. But yeah, that rounds up all of the monsters. Then we've got our spells. We play 3 Celestial Transformation. This card has almost never been good, but thanks to this is random archetype. This deck is actually, this card is very, very useful. You get to special summon a fairy from your hand, and that attack is halved. They all have 0 attack. It's irrelevant, and destroyed during their end phase. They can't be destroyed by card effects, so it's irrelevant. It is basically a free summon of a Time Lord. Or Time Maiden, though I wouldn't recommend it. But basically, this is like it's a free special summon for the deck. It's awesome. You can use it's a quick play, so you can use it during your opponent's turn. You just got to make sure not to ever use it during your standby phase, because if you use it during your standby phase, automatically the last effect that will resolve is these cards getting shuffled back. So let's say you're playing against like Altergeist, and they activate what's that card called? Secret Village of Spellcasters. You're like, oh, I better use Celestial fast during the standby phase fast before that goes into effect. You definitely don't want to do that, because you'll shuffle your own card back into the deck. Whatever you summon will get shuffled back and just lose it. So definitely play 3 of those. Very good card. 1 Foolish Burial. You can send the usually the Time Maiden, best card to send. Graveyard effect, summon anything you want, basically. One for one, because I can only play it at 1. Gets you Time Maiden. 3 copies of Super Poly for ultimate disruption. Can't complain with that. 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance, one of my favorite cards ever printed. But if you wanted to, you could use Advanced Draw. Advanced Draw has a lot of that one is like more of the budget option. And Advanced Draw has a lot of like positive things in the deck. Like it gets you a monster in the graveyard, and that helps some of the trap cards. It definitely does a lot of positive things. It is just that this card is a +1, and this card is sort of neutral, and the tributing a level 8 or higher monster is a cost, unfortunately. So sometimes you'll tribute for cost, your opponent will ash you, and then you just basically lost a level 8 you lost one of your Time Lords, and you didn't draw 2 cards, so you went -2. Actually, your opponent lost a hand trap, so you went -1. So it's a little problematic. So I'd prefer to play this, because it's just a safer card. You really don't care about this extra deck. You almost never use it. So definitely, I would prefer to play that. 2 copies of Called by the Grave. This card's good for interrupting. You want most of the time the Time Maiden to go through. So why not play this? 3 copies of Empty Machine. This is one of the newer support cards. I say new, but it's really like a year old. But on the timeline of Time Lord cards, it is one of the newer cards. Alright, the first time this face-up card would be destroyed, it is not destroyed. And then once per turn, you can activate one of these effects. Discard one level 10 monster, draw a card. Great. You're saying, oh, doesn't that like interrupt with where's that card? Extravagance? Absolutely not. Most of the time, you're using that during your opponent's turn anyway. If this card is the only card in your spell and trap card zone, target one Timelord monster in your graveyard, shuffle it back, and then you can set one Infinite Machine directly from your deck. So it's this right here. That effect cannot be ashed because it can't be ashed because it sets directly from field. Sets directly to the field. This card you activate by sending the last card I just read to the graveyard, and then once per turn, it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and then you can activate one of these effects during your main phase, special summon one Time Lord from your hand, which is, again, during the main phase, which is a very good effect, and then also you can target one Time Lord monster in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, then you can set one infinite light directly from your hand or deck. And this is basically the win condition of the deck. It's one of the win conditions. Most of the time, you'll just burn your opponent to death, but I'd say this is like one of your other win conditions, because if you get to this, you basically win the duel. You activate this card by sending Infinite Machine, which was the last card, to the graveyard from your spell and trap card zone. If this face-up card cannot be destroyed by your this face-up card can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, which is good. It has like its own self-protection. And then neither player can target Time Lord monsters you control with card effects or return Time Lord monsters from the field to the deck, which is like, I'm telling you, like, once you have this, it's done. It can't get rid of your Time Lords. And then beyond that, once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can special summon up to one Time Lord from each your hand, deck, and graveyard with different names, ignoring their summoning conditions. So, like I said, like once you have this, if you manage to do this, it's not the easiest thing to do, and it takes several turns because you have to go from this to this to this, and it's not that easy to do. But once you do this, you basically like it usually takes about, I'd say, 3 turns to do this, but once you do this, you basically have won the game. It's very difficult to come back from 3 Time Lords that can't be targeted or shuffled back. Like, it's just, it's too difficult to get through that. Next, we've got some more of our consistency cards. We've got 3 copies in Torrential Tribute. Your monsters can't be destroyed by card effects, so it's beautiful. And then we've got 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force, just kind of battle protection, I guess, your life point protection, and then 1 copy of Blazing Mirror Force, because, like, you can't play 4 Storming Mirror Forces, and I didn't want to play the Drowning, because sometimes you'll have a monster and your opponent will just attack into, like, they'll impermanence your monster and attack into that 0 attack monster, and the problem with having the Drowning is that you have to have an empty field, so I prefer to play the Blazing. So there we go. That is everything in the main deck. Now we go to the extra deck. For the extra deck, we have 3 copies of Super Dreadnought, Rail Cannon Gustav Max, that great finisher, 2 level 10s, easy to make in this deck, 1 Galatea, 1 Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, 1 Shizuku, 3 Starving, give me a second, 3 Starving Venom Dragons for various matchups, you already know, Orcus Thunder Dragon, 2 Mud Dragon, 1 Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, 3 Diplexer Chimeras for various Cybers matchups like Salamangre, like Marincesses, which are coming out in exactly 1 week, and any other Cybers things that come up, like a lot of the various Link monsters in extra decks are Cybers, so it helps. So that is the extra deck, and as I always say, I only play these at 1 because you don't really need to play them at 1, because you usually side in the Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries whenever you're going second anyway, so you never need more than 1 of these. So you don't have to worry about using Pot of Desires and losing them because you only need 1 of them. And then let's move on to the side deck, the ever important side deck. 3 copies of Denko Sekko. This is good for going second. Prevents your opponent from floodgating you using Mirror Force. This is good against like True Dracos because it stops them from using it stops them from flipping things that will like negate you. Stuff like skill drain. I'm forgetting the other card, but Monarch's Erupt. Yeah, it stops them from like negating your effects. Good against those decks. Also good against like Altergeist. That stops them from like starting up their engine. 3 copies of Dino Wrestler, Pankatrops, special summon it, tribute it, pop a card. Good against that. Lancia for interruption of banish heavy decks. 3 copies of the Ghost Reaper Winter Cherries. Again, interruption. Make sure your opponent builds a weak board, and then Time Lords are very good going first or second, because going second they always have monsters to attack into, and they can like shuffle back row, stuff like that. And I forgot to mention, Denko Seko is really good against True Dracos, because you can use Denko Seko as and then also Zaphion the Time Lord, because you can summon Denko. They can't flip anything. You attack, shuffle all their back row, and they just lose everything. And usually, True Dracos will have like 1 monster, so it's very good against them. And then we play 3 copies of Twin Twister for various back row matchups that are problematic for us. Most of the time, it's the back row matchups that kill us. Because they can negate our monsters or flip them back to the deck or hand or something like that. So you definitely want to deal with those first. But that is it. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. If you did, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.